The immortal cells, the woman whose body changed medicine forever. Without her permission, right now, in laboratories across the world, parts of a woman are alive. She died in 1951. Her cells have been used in over 70,000 scientific studies. They helped develop the polio vaccine, cancer treatments, the COVID vaccine. They have been to space. They have been cloned millions of times. Her family did not know for 20 years. Nobody asked her permission. And the company that made billions from her cells never paid her family a single dollar. Tonight, we go inside the story of Henrietta Lacks, the most important person in the history of modern medicine that most people have never heard of. And at the end, the legal battle that is still happening right now. Today, in 2025, Henrietta Lacks was born in Roanoke, Virginia in 1920. Her mother died when she was 4. She was raised by her grandfather in a tobacco farming community in Clover, Virginia. She married at 14, had 5 children by the time she was 30. In January 1951, she felt a knot inside her body. Something wrong. She went to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, one of the only hospitals in the segregated South that treated Black patients. The diagnosis was cervical cancer, an aggressive form that her doctors had rarely seen before. She was treated with radium, standard for the time. During her treatment, the doctor took 2 samples of tissue from her cervix, one healthy, one cancerous. He did not tell her. He sent them to the hospital's cell research laboratory, to a researcher named George Gay, who had been trying for years to grow human cells outside the body. Every sample he had ever received had died within days. Henrietta Lacks's cells did not die. George Gay watched Henrietta's cells do something no human cells had ever done in a laboratory. They kept dividing, day after day, week after week. Normal human cells divide a limited number of times, then stop. It is a biological mechanism called the Hayflick limit. Henrietta Lacks' cancer cells had lost that limit. They were, in the most literal biological sense, immortal. Gay named the cell line HeLa, from the first 2 letters of her first and last name. He shared samples freely with researchers across the country, then across the world. Within months, HeLa cells were being used in Jonas Salk's laboratory in Pittsburgh. The cells were exposed to the polio virus. Researchers watched how the virus behaved, developed a response. The polio vaccine that eventually protected hundreds of millions of children was tested on HeLa cells. Meanwhile, Henrietta Lacks was dying. She died on October 4th, 1951, 8 months after her first diagnosis. She was 31 years old. She never knew her cells had left the hospital, never knew they were in laboratories across America, never knew they had already changed medicine forever. By the 1950s, HeLa cells had become an industry. A factory in Minnesota was mass-producing them, sending out packages of cells to any laboratory that requested them. 6 trillion cells a week, from one woman. They were sent to laboratories in the Soviet Union during the Cold War as part of a scientific exchange program. One of the few things the 2 superpowers shared. HeLa cells went to space on early Soviet missions to test the effect of zero gravity on human cells. They were used to study viruses, bacteria, gene expression, radiation, and drug interactions. Every major medical advance of the second half of the 20th century touched HeLa cells at some point. And through all of it, the Lacks family knew nothing. Henrietta's husband David was a simple man, not well educated, not wealthy. Her children grew up without enough money for health insurance. The cells that were saving lives across the world had come from their mother, and nobody had ever told them. In 1973, a researcher needed genetic information from Henrietta's biological relatives to resolve a contamination problem in the HeLa cell supply. He called the Lacks family. It was the first time anyone from the scientific community had ever contacted them. The researcher assumed they knew, talked to them about their mother's cells as if it were common knowledge. It was not common knowledge. Henrietta's daughter Deborah spent years trying to understand what had happened to her mother, what the cells were, what they were being used for, whether her mother had been in pain. She found a world that had used her mother's body and never once thought to call. In 2010, journalist Rebecca Skloot published a book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It became a bestseller. An HBO movie followed. The world learned the name Henrietta Lacks. Johns Hopkins issued a statement of gratitude to the family. The National Institutes of Health agreed to give the Lacks family 2 seats on a committee that oversees access to HeLa cell genomic data. No financial compensation. The cells had generated billions of dollars in commercial value. The family received 2 seats on a committee. In 2021, the Lacks family filed a lawsuit against Thermo Fisher Scientific, one of the world's largest biotech companies. The company was still commercially producing and selling HeLa cells, still profiting from a woman whose tissue was taken without consent. The lawsuit argued that modern medical ethics and consent laws, even though they did not exist in 1951, should apply retroactively given the scale of ongoing commercial exploitation. The legal arguments were complex, the precedent implications enormous. If the Lacks family won, it would affect every research institution and biotech company that had ever used HeLa cells. The case was dismissed in 2021. The judge ruled that the family had no legal claim under current law. The family appealed. In 2023, the appeals court sent the case back for reconsideration on a narrower argument. As of today, the legal status remains unresolved. Henrietta Lacks' cells are still being sold commercially. Her grandchildren still cannot afford health insurance. But the Lacks family lawsuit revealed something in the discovery process that almost nobody reported on. Internal documents from Thermo Fisher showing that as recently as 2018, company lawyers had discussed the Lacks family's potential legal claims and had made a specific decision about how to handle them. That decision, and the internal communications around it, are now part of the ongoing appeal record. Legal scholars following the case say those documents, if fully aired in court, could change the outcome entirely. The next hearing is scheduled, and for the first time, Henrietta Lacks' granddaughter will testify in person. What she plans to say has not been made public. That testimony, and what it means for every biotech company that has ever used human tissue without consent, is the subject of the next video. Follow now. This story is not over.